There we go. Hello, everyone. Thank you again for coming out to the 2021 series of How Do We Go Forward, How Do We Go Back? My name is Fen Kennedy. I take they, them pronouns, and I am speaking to you from the stolen land of the Creek Nation, now known as Tuscaloosa, Alabama. How Do We Go Forward, How Do We Go Back began as a way for us to think about returning to dance in the fall of 2020. This summer offers us a chance not only to reflect on where we've come from, but to think about how we can change our communities as we move into another academic year. Every week, I invite two guests to have a conversation with each other about one element of this broader topic. After 30 minutes, I'll invite everyone to turn on the cameras and unmute, and the floor is going to be open for questions and discussion. This week, I want to introduce you to two folks who are an incredible force for the arts in the Alabama community, Ann Tronson and Boyce Porter. Ann Tronson is a Birmingham, Alabama-based multidisciplinary artist whose work has been exhibited in solo and group exhibitions, including Salon 94, New York, Louis B. James Gallery, I see College for Creative Studies, NOK Center of Art and Architecture, Palm Spring Art Museum, and C for Courtside, Knoxville. She received her MFA from the University of Southern California and is currently the co-director of Vinegar, an artist-run, women-led nonprofit that champions and exhibits local, regional, and international artists who work in emerging and experimental art forms that push the boundaries of its medium. Vinegar opened its first permanent exhibition space, Vinegar's Contemporary, in 2020. Boyce Porter is a community development consultant, writer, and poet and orator who helps to facilitate collaboration between artists, community, and business. He is the creative director of Bards and Brews, a monthly poetry event in partnership with the Birmingham Public Library, and On Stage at the Carver, a monthly poetry event in partnership with the Alabama Jazz Hall of Fame. Boyce is co-founder of Ensley Alive and founding director of the Color Project Ensley. Boyce Porter has spoken word published by Starbucks and has given workshops and performances internationally. Welcome to both of you. Will you start us off by saying what projects you're working on, and then I'll let you just dive into conversation.
Okay. I feel like that's kind of a loaded question. What project are you working on? Like which one? Let's pick one. So currently I am working on a project called Black In, and it is an online festival that will happen in a three-dimensional kind of VR space that will hopefully, if things go like I'd like them to go, we'll be seeing this thing go online next month. So yeah, that's fun. I'm also currently working on a book of poetry. Well, I guess I'm less working on it, and now my publisher is working on it. So there should be a book of poetry of my poetry out very soon. And on Thursday, July 1st, at wherever you buy magazines, Poetry Magazine will be publishing 2 of my poems.
Fantastic.
Mm-hmm. All right, I'll kick that over to Ann to say what she's working on.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Ben, for inviting Boyce and I. We never are not two people who can't not talk enough, so this is perfect. We'll try to keep it brief. But I'm working on as a solo person, artist. I have a show coming up at the Gadsden Museum of Art in November, which I'm pretty excited about, just starting to kind of lay the groundwork there and what I'm going to show, how I'm going to show it, how I want to frame the works, not literally frame them, but how do I want to conceptually frame them. And then with Vinegar, we have our Shape residency exhibition coming up and soon. So probably by end of July, beginning of August, that will be up. So that's really exciting. And then Vinegar is partnering with Secret Stages, and we're getting ready for that. That's the first weekend of August. And so we're going to do an installation called Surround.
Wait.
Yeah. So Fen and Melissa and I, the other co-director of Vinegar, we did a project together a year and a half ago, 3 months before COVID, and spent the fall working on it and got a chance to do a really big collaboration with Fen, and it was amazing. So we're gonna show that here in Birmingham. So I guess those are kind of the big things.
Excuse me. So, where to start? Like that's the question. So first, before I start, we had a couple of prompt questions, and two of those prompt questions are ones that I definitely want to make sure that I speak on, because they're just they just resonated with me. And so the questions were, how can we get people involved with art while also respecting COVID safety?
Mhm.
And how can people get funding and engagement flowing towards more marginalized folks? Those are two things that have been near and dear to my heart. The first one for the last year and a half or so, and the second one forever. Right. And so thank you, Fen, for posing that question, because that's, man, yeah. So let me just talk a little bit about some of the work that I've done, and some of the work that I've done in collaboration with Anne and Vinegar. So I've started painting murals when I was 11 years old for the Birmingham Museum of Art. And so I took that skill along with skills I learned in college, while I was becoming a civil engineer, and mashed them together and created this thing called the Color Project Inslee. And what the Color Project Inslee is essentially is it's a health initiative for the people in Inslee and the surrounding communities to positively affect the health of the people by using creative placemaking. And creative placemaking means we take outdoor spaces and make them so that people want to be in them. And so installing public art, community gardens, pocket parks, and a pocket park is really it's kind of a legal illegal park, or an illegal legal park. I don't know. It's one of those things. Essentially, you find some public land that the city or whatever municipality is not using or underutilizing, and you put park things on it that can be easily removed, like benches, maybe a swing set, something like that. Things that you can take up in a day. Put the park things there, and you just leave them for the community. And more times than not, whatever municipality it is will not ask you to move the stuff. Like they're like, oh, this is great. Somebody else did it and we didn't have to do it. We didn't pay for it. Fine. Yay. So we put all these things together to grab people into the spaces, because I found that most people who are working to build community, especially people working to build community through art, always start with physical well-being of people. It's like, well, let's design a space so that people can exercise in it, right? But the vast majority of people aren't just going to go, oh, look, there's a space to exercise in, I'm going to go exercise. Like, that's just not that's just not a thing. But we decided we wanted to start with the mental, the social health of people. Like, the social health is social determinants are just as important factors in determining good health as physical determinants are. So we start with the social health of people by getting people into a space together who normally would not be in spaces together. So you create these places outside, people show up, and other people show up, neighbors show up, and you realize you've been living next door to someone you haven't seen in 3 years, right? Or something like that. And people start to talk to each other. And we know that mental health is directly affected by your social health. And mental health is usually degraded by people shutting themselves in, by going to work, coming home, closing the door, not going back out until it's time to go to work, right? You don't talk to anybody, you don't see anybody, maybe you watch TV or you get on your social media and that's it. But if you have these places in your community that are very inviting, you drive by and it's very colorful, and you decide to stop in every now and then, your mental health starts to improve. And when people's mental health starts to improve, people start to move. They just do. That's just a thing. I don't know how to explain it. I'm sure there are plenty of wonderful doctors and scientists out there who can explain it. But I do know that when people have good mental health, they move a lot. And when you move a lot, your physical health improves. And so we start with the social health of people by giving them spaces to gather together, which affects the mental health, which then affects the physical health of people. And so holistically, the Color Project, we are attempting to positively affect the entire person, the mind, body, spirit, the whole thing.
That's amazing. I
And
know,
so
and
in doing that,
I know that Anne, you've also been really engaged with like making spaces, and you're like getting into gallery spaces for yourself as well. Does what Voice is saying about space making resonate with you also?
Absolutely. Well, Melissa and I, like Ashley mentioned when we talked, Melissa moved here, and I'd been in Birmingham 5 years and had felt actually pretty disconnected to the art scene in a lot of ways. And I think part of, for me at least, like feeling connected to a community isn't just showing up at art openings, but actually, I guess, like being part of that. Well, let me step back a little bit. So when I met Melissa, I was pretty like, this town has so much potential, and I would love to see a space that shows art that you don't really see, that's outside the marketplace. That was a huge thing, and that was kind of the bond that brought us together. Was we're both video artists and making work that really has very little space inside the art world. It's something that unless you're really quite famous and you're showing in museums, you know, there's not really a gallery scene as much for that type of work. And with Vinegar, we started Vinegar literally as an artist collective, kind of just to support each other and our own practices. And pretty quickly it sort of became something totally else. And it became a way for us to actually start promoting other people. And now it fully exists in that, where Melissa and I are really trying to support artist projects, pay them, you know, a wage to do a project with us, which again is very rare in the art world. And then, you know, thinking about a community that's grown out of that. So from our openings, where you are creating, like Voice is talking about, you know, we create bonfires and we create, you know, all these amazing people who show up, and it becomes this real social scene and place. And even with our, we call it our anti-board. We have an anti-board. It's really our board. We call them the anti-board because we're doing things a little differently. And that's another like really important community that we've created through this, that you're, you know, the 12 people on our board, and then Melissa and I, you're really getting together a group of people who would most likely not know each other, or it would have taken years for those relationships to form. And then they're really holding us accountable to these ideas of community. And also, I think, you know, you mentioned in this question you want to answer just populations that are underserved and recognizing our privilege within that, but still feeling like, well, we're working in means that are really hard to get representation for. You know, it's something that people kind of challenge as even an art form. Yeah, there's my thought on that, Fen.
I'm just hearing, because you're both starting with social health. How do you do the social thing in a time where like we can't gather? How do we keep the community going?
Good question.
yeah, that's a great question. And so I think the answer to that question was much easier than I thought it would be. Right? Because you know, when COVID hit and everybody was you know, afraid to do everything and everything closed down, I was like, well, that's it for me, because as a performing artist, I need people to gather in order to do the thing that I do. And it's like, well, I'm dead in the water, but people wanted to continue having art. And so it wasn't like herding cats to get people together. It was kind of like, oh, you guys want to keep doing art? And so we have these digital platforms and stuff we can use. Let's do it. And everybody was like, yay, let's do it. And I'm saying it like it was very easy. I really just kind of showed up and participated in some stuff that Anne and Melissa were putting together through Vinegar. Any a residency called Shape, and they asked me to moderate. And so I just kind of Johnny come lately. And for me, it was like, oh, it's just so simple. Everybody just shows up. And so I'm sure there was a lot of work that went ahead of that, but people were very excited to be able to plug into things, even when they could not, even when we couldn't see each other face to face in real life. The next best thing was at seeing people's faces and seeing people's expressions and such, and their emotions, their movements over the screen.
I'm muted, sorry. Yeah, it's, we took a huge break from our programming when the pandemic hit. We canceled it for the next year. We just knew that vinegar couldn't exist. And we had one opening. So we had opened our physical location, which is a gallery, on February 21st, I think, 2020. And we didn't know if we could survive. I mean, Melissa and I are still professional volunteers, so we're trying to get this nonprofit, which can get to our funding questions about how do you get something off the ground. Neither of us are independently wealthy. We both have to work and everything else that goes along with being a person. And so we were actually, there was a part of a relief too, like, okay, I'm really tired. We got this thing off the ground. So we took the couple months and we really didn't do anything. We got our 501c3 status within that little time frame of the first month of the pandemic. And then with the murder of George Floyd, that kind of shifted everything, where we were like, okay, we've been on Zooms and we've been using digital platforms to go to things. And we had been in talks with one of our board members, Celestia Morgan, a photographer here in Birmingham, who had come to us about doing a residency for artist professionalism. And after that June and the protests and everything going on, we quickly, as a group, said, let's steer this in a more immediate direction. And immediately Voice's name came up, and Voice and I had known each other over the past couple of years, and it was really amazing. It was a very natural thing to bring Voice in, but I don't think you just showed up, Voice. Like, Voice was very involved in everything. And so we did a residency in August, and that was even before we reopened the gallery. And I feel like that really got us excited again, that you could do something within the pandemic, fully COVID safe. And one of the things that's really dear to our hearts is access to anyone. And the problem with residencies is, number one, most artist residencies, you have to be able to afford to go. Number two, you have to be able to afford to pay for your life back home, or pay for daycare, or be able to afford to have someone take care of your kids if you go on one. You have to ship supplies, you have to buy supplies. Like, there's so much involved that really deals with access and financial support. And this was a residency where no one had to apply. So there was that's another thing about residencies and grants, that long process of Voice, exactly. That long process of applying for something and you don't know if you're going to get it. And most grant applications are in service of the jury, not of the artist or the person applying, and having 13, 14, 15 questions, which is pretty typical for most grants, whether for an individual artist or organization, is actually just a huge amount of time that unfortunately most people don't have, unless you have the money and the time to have those things. And then you have to have a certain amount of education to know how to write grants. I mean, there's so many things involved. There's a language, there's something that they're looking for that you might not know until you've applied 4 times and you finally got someone on the phone to talk about it. So all of these things really came into our decision making with our residencies. And so we admit 20 people into our residencies. They're a month-long process. We pay every person who participates in terms of our moderator, our movement artists, our guest speakers, and ASL interpreters. So we pay for all of that, and then we offer the residency for free, and then it can be all over the world. And so we've had people from other countries now come, and so we actually, oddly, the circumstance of everything created something where like, oh, a lot of people are feeling the same way. These issues are not just local, they're national, they're international, they're global. And I think for me, that's been one of the most exciting things, is like letting people know out there, like, oh, racism doesn't exist just in the South, or, you know, white supremacy doesn't just exist, like it's everywhere. And so it's been, I think, affirming that number one, we've met so many amazing artists who want to be involved and don't have access. And so that's very affirming to know that we can hopefully inspire other organizations to think about what they're doing, and hopefully break down these barriers that really hurt people from participating.
Well, so I know this question of access is near and dear to your heart. As we go kind of out into the world beyond the pandemic, how are you thinking about it?
It's so a few things come to mind. Firstly, I do understand that organizations have to have money to survive, right? That's just kind of a thing. We live in a society, right? Dot dot dot. But also believe that some of the access, some of the hurdles to access, some of the barriers are artificially inflated. Like that there are a lot of organizations, especially very large organizations who are very well funded, who could in fact do virtual residencies like we've done with Shape from Vinegar, who could do, you know, many other things and just kind of allow people platform to use. But that's not happening. They're not. Hopefully people will take note with what we've been doing with Shape, and more of that will come soon. But as it stands, I think the way that we make sure that people who don't have adequate access, and people who don't even have adequate knowledge, because some people don't even know that they don't have access to things, like they don't even know those things exist. And if they did know they existed, then they wouldn't have access to them. And so some ways to get access to people is to just give it to them. And I know this may be an oversimplification of a thing, but if you are available to access something, maybe you're running an organization and your organization can access funding for whatever a thing is, and you know people who are not necessarily part of your organization, but who do that thing well, right? And if your organization is in a position to access that funding, then you should access that funding and bring on board the people who would not otherwise have had that access, and get that funding to them to do the thing that they can do. And I think there are a lot of organizations who do things like that, and some of them do a fantastic job of it. Like there's an organization here in Birmingham called Create Birmingham. Create Birmingham does a great job of finding funds, or if you as an artist find funds somewhere but you can't access it, you need to have an organizational structured access, you can take that funding request to them and they will do all they can to get that funding for you. And there are plenty of organizations out there across the country, across the world, who do those kind of things. I think that it is very important that we identify those organizations and we kind of call them out by name, because we end up doing a lot of calling out bad organizations by name, but we don't really call out good organizations by name. Like the good ones are just like on the side doing what they're supposed to be doing and not getting any recognition. And eventually, if they don't get enough recognition, they don't get any more funding, and then they go away. So we should spend at least some of our time making sure that the great organizations are known and publicized, and so that other organizations can pick up on that and do it. I hope that was an answer, because I felt like I was rambling.
No, it was great. And what would you have to say about this? Like going forward, how does access work for you?
Well, one thing that we've done really well for us, which I'm not like bragging. It's just like something that, so Melissa and I were like so gung ho when we started, and we actually were probably like so over ambitious. And then like certain things fell through the cracks, right? Some relationships fell through the cracks, or we would get so excited and then we wouldn't really be able to do things because we just don't have the manpower or the infrastructure or the bandwidth, as people like to say, but it was so true. And so the way that we have our, basically most of our shows lined up for the next 2 years, and we both have jobs on top of it. So we've gone to a place where going forward, we're actually like Melissa said, it's like being on a treadmill, and you just got to put one foot in front of the other and the treadmill will keep you going. And so I think one of the biggest things that I think we had to take away from the pandemic, and I want to take away in my own personal life, is not to do so much. And when we do something, we do it with more care and with more love. And I think that's something that when you talk about all these issues of funding and like breaking down structures and how things work, and really the inadequacies and the inequality based in all these structures, it does take time to dismantle it, unfortunately, right? I mean, unless we just, everyone just stops contributing because everyone says enough, which would be amazing. But I think like knowing that we can keep doing good work, or other people, hopefully, our goal has always been like, God, we hope 10 more art spaces in Birmingham opens up, seeing that we could do it, that maybe they could as well. And then getting to a place where we can streamline it enough that we can still have our other jobs and still run good programs that care about everyone involved, and including Melissa and I, like we're the only two people who aren't paid in the organization, where we pay everyone else, including the artists we exhibit with and everything. So just trying to figure that out. And I think that's a big question for a lot of organizations.
Yeah, I don't want you guys to have jobs anymore outside of the arts, outside of Vinegar. Like this is, I need you guys to be doing this full time.
Great. We have hit 7. I want folks to folks who are in our guests, you may start like thinking about your questions and turning your cameras back on. But before we move to that section, what I would like to ask Anne and Voice, what is the question that you wish you'd been asked? And how would you answer it?
I don't know.
I'm looking at my notes from today of when I was writing about this and thinking about it. I don't know, maybe someone will ask the question.
Maybe.
All right, any closing thoughts you want to leave us with before I bring folks into our Q&A?
I have a closing thought.
Please.
I gave a presentation a little while back about how people often ask me, how do you do the things that you do? Like, how are you able to get these things done? Like, I watched people attempt to do things similar to that for years, and nobody's ever been able to do it. And my thoughts about that are, you have to build a tribe. You have to build a tribe. The comedian and activist Dick Gregory said once, and I will remember this for the rest of my life, if you could do it by yourself, it would already be done. Mm-hmm. Right. If you could do it by yourself, it will already be done. You have to build a tribe. You have to find people, not even people who are necessarily doing the same thing that you're doing, but people who want to have a similar outcome. Like, if you're wanting to build an arts community, then you don't need 5,000 oil painters, right? But you do need people who are passionate about art in all kinds of different ways. If you're wanting to just build community in your neighborhood, like, you don't need a bunch of psychologists and community development specialists. What you need are people who are passionate about the neighborhood. Make a coalition, right? Build your team. And your team does not have to have a leader. Like, you can use what's called network leadership, which means that if there are 5 people involved in your tribe and one person has an idea, everybody works towards that idea. If a second person has a different idea, then that person is the lead on that idea, and everybody works toward that idea. So there is no centralized, president, vice president, anything like that. Whoever has the idea, it's your baby. And so you lead it, and the rest of us do everything that we can. We put in all the resources that we can to help make sure that your idea is a success. Build a tribe.
All right, thank you for that, boys. Friends, I'm going to bring you back into the room. All right, so we have small numbers for our live guests today. So I am just going to invite folks to unmute and turn on their videos. And if you have questions for Anne and Voice, speak up, let yourselves be heard.
What are y'all most looking forward to in the last quarter of 2021 and going into 2022?
I want a dance party. I'm not gonna lie. I just want some really good music, and I want to be outside, and I want to dance with my friends and my children. I think I need to let it out.
So I'm really looking forward to releasing some pent up creative energy. So things, and what I mean by that is there are things that I've already created that I've just kind of been sitting on, just holding close. Like this, I'm just so afraid to let this out into the world. And I have decided within maybe the last month or so that I've just got to let it go. And so over the last quarter of this year into next year, I will be releasing projects that scare the hell out of me.
Why do they scare you?
Mostly because they're just so intimate. Like, they're just things that a lot of the things that people get from me that go into shows and into printed versions or what have you are things that have been worked 50 or 60 times, and they're ready for people. So these other things have been so personal that I haven't really wanted to touch them. It's like, I put these things together, they have a definite meaning for me, and I don't want to change anything about it because that would change what it means. But also, if I don't change anything, then everybody's going to see all there is to know about me and my thought process and my whatever. So that's a little bit scary.
Hey, I'm part of the viewing public. Had a theater degree from the 1970s. Have been in and out of theater for years. And I have absolutely felt, I guess, abandoned this last year because of the lack of live performance. And I've had season tickets for all kinds of shows all through the years, especially here at the University of Alabama for the last 30. And I find myself, even with the coming of it's back on stage, they're back live. I think I'm part of the public that's still a bit scared. What do you say to me? I want so desperately to get back there as an audience member, as a volunteer in the theater, but this has been a hard year. think for all of us. I know for you guys, but for your audiences as well.
I think you have every reason to be nervous.
Yeah.
You know, I think I was with some strangers, you know, professional things, and it was the first time in over a year I've been live with two people that I've never met before at a dinner, and we didn't talk about COVID the whole time, and everyone's, you know, you're just kind of assuming now that everyone's vaccinated, and they were, but I left that dinner and I was like, I'm so socially awkward.
Yeah.
I mean, I just don't know how to talk to anyone anymore. I mean, I don't even drink. And I felt like I'd had like 10 glasses of weird wine. And I mean, I was just such a mess. And I think what I tell our audience is, because we have had openings throughout the whole pandemic. And I just went to our first opening at a different gallery last week, and I saw some people and I invited them on Saturday and they came, but it's the first time they've set foot in our gallery since before the pandemic. I think it's really normal to feel that way. And I think because it's so serious, you know, this thing is so serious, and I think we've all been through a collective hurt, and we're not recognizing that. So that makes it even harder to kind of move through it, because I don't think we can move beyond it. I think we're still in it. And so I would say, you know, embrace that, Anna, and know that it's totally okay. And I mean, I you know, I still wear a mask every time I'm inside. I have 2 young children who cannot get vaccinated right now. I do not feel bad about it. It's about the safety of the people closest to me. And so I just always suggest people still do it for the people you care most about, which are, you know, people in the theater world and on all those performers and all those people. And I think it's beautiful that you are nervous. That shows a great depth there, but it's a yearning that you have for those live moments. And I'd be interested what Fen has to say about that.
Yeah, for those who don't know, I'm a dance professor. I had a virtual work go out during the pandemic, and my first live show will be in October. Gosh, Anna, I'd love you to come. But I'm also thinking as we speak that audiences have a lot of power, especially in the arts world. And audiences can get active about the kinds of communities they want to create. Also, if you write to the folks who are putting things on and saying, what is your vaccine policy? Is it on your website? If you write and you say, like, I'm interested in donating to your organization, how many women are on your board? Like, so get in touch with people and ask pointed questions, and show people the kind of audience member that you want to be and the kind of work you're interested in going to see. Like, voting with your feet is a real way that you can make a difference in the arts community.
So I would say, Anna, just take your time. Just take your time, Anna. You know, if you decide to go out, wear your mask, take your hand sanitizer with you. If you start to feel very uncomfortable, it's okay to go home. It is okay to go home, because if you've shown up, that means you bought a ticket. You know, that means that you have they've counted your head when you walk through the door. And so a lot of the things of supporting the arts, you will have accomplished, and you kind of build your tolerance as you go. Like, just go for short times.
Yeah, I saw my first live performance last Sunday here in Tuscaloosa at the Bama. I saw Bright Star. And I was able to take my granddaughter, which is very important to me.
Very
She's
nice.
10, and she needs to be in the theater to see this stuff. So it was great, but it was still kind of creepy to be out among humans.
Well, I know that social awkwardness that Anne was talking about. I had coffee with someone today, and I found myself reverting back to my 5th grade self, so socially awkward. And I was like, so what do you think about aliens? Like, I haven't been in real life with people in so long. What do we talk about?
Well, do you worry that, I mean, I don't want to take up all the questions. Do you worry as performers that your audiences are going to be slow to come back?
Yeah. I think worried with reason. They have a reason to be nervous. I think too, like a lot of our audience at the gallery are already like pretty COVID safe. And, you know, it's a certain audience that probably believed in like staying home and keeping your social distance and wearing a mask and everything. So I think it's even harder where you're seeing these massive people going out, but they're not necessarily going to go to an art opening. So yeah, I think, you know, we haven't lost too many supporters. We didn't have a ton to begin with. We're such a new organization. But we haven't lost too many of our like monthly givers. I will say we didn't do any campaigning the last year at all. So we're so new. We didn't do any, we did one thing on Giving Tuesday in December. We did an announcement. We decided that morning, let's just do it. Let's take advantage of it. See if anything happens. And we actually raised a couple $1,000s that day. But we, as a new organization, we felt it was our responsibility not to be out there being too desperate. Yeah, I mean, everyone needed stuff, and you know, we weren't making a salary anyways. And so I'll be interested to see how we kind of launch our trajectory on fundraising. And that's where I'll be interested to see if people are like, oh, they made it through the pandemic. They still brought artists and paid artists and did projects, local and national. You know what? I do want to support them, you know, and so that's what I hope. It, for me, that feels like sunshine, that maybe, but yeah, no, I'm totally nervous. Yeah.
I almost feel the opposite. I'm worried about audiences coming back too fast.
Yeah.
And for me, it's a little weird that my first live show is going to be in a giant auditorium. Like, I would like to take over a coffee shop for an evening and bring in like a lot of little solo works just for people, like more like an art gallery opening. Like, I would like to have like a pop-up night where we bring in a couple of artists and everyone has a drink and talks about it.
Mm.
I don't want a theater of 500 people yet. So I would love to look into some kind of different kinds of venues for dance, because dance in particular in Tuscaloosa has tried to draw the big crowds. Royce, you did a
Yeah,
really
like I feel the same with you. I feel some kind of way about people coming back too fast. So I did my first in-person event on the first Friday in June. I do this thing called Bards and Brews. It's a poetry event and beer tasting with the Birmingham Public Library, and we have been virtual since last February. And so June was our first time back. We had a limited seating. We average somewhere close to 200 people per event, but this time we only allowed 30 people to come in. We had spacing. We required people to wear masks. But I got a little bit of a scare. One of the poets went on, and she had this wonderful accent, and she did some really beautiful poetry, but she was dragging a suitcase. I was like, you know, what's up with the suitcase? I thought maybe it was a prop or something. But then at the end of her time, she said that she had literally just gotten off an international flight and came directly to the library to do our show. And I was like, well, that's amazing, but also no. Like, I'm so happy that people in other countries are like making their way to our space, but man, come on now. Like, that was a little scary. It was a little scary. So yes, people coming back too fast. So for the performing arts, people are kind of starving for it. Like, they want to be out, they want to rub elbows with people, they want to see something spectacular. And I'm a little bit afraid of that. Like we are very consciously keeping our crowds small, so that we can control spacing and all that stuff. But I can't really control someone walking in from Lithuania 10 seconds after they got off the plane. Like that's a little scary too.
Okay.
Go ahead, Cindy.
Well, and I think Voice answered this kind of already, but I just wondered if, I don't know how to phrase it, but like your creativity during this time, is your work now different than it was before? Or are there different aspects to it now? I guess for both, are you seeing different outcomes to your art than you did before due to the isolation and the things that were done?
I am. I am definitely. I feel like my art is a lot more raw now than before. Because before there were always people around, and I had groups of writers that I would hang out with. We workshop things and we throw ideas around, and I was doing this all the time. And so even my like first or second versions of something would already be very heavily edited. But now there's no one else around. It's just me, and I'm writing directly from creativity and emotion. And I'm creating from that space. And then I just close the book and walk away from it. And it's like, it is what it is. That's it. That's what you're going to get. Which is why I was saying some of this stuff I'm a little afraid to put out, because I haven't had those other people to temper me. And so it's pretty raw.
Yeah, I've yes, absolutely. This last, even before the pandemic, I've gone through some major changes in my life, and some really good ones. But like, I found that like it wasn't like one day everything was just better, but it just takes a long time. And having the confidence to actually like be an artist and put yourself out there. I never didn't have confidence, and then about, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, I just kind of stopped making work. And I went and got a pretty corporate job that I had for about 5 years. And 2 years ago, I left that job. And because I was just having, Voice. I was having, all the usual things with that work schedule. And before you know it, I was like the boss of, a $5 million business. And I have 2 little kids under the age of 7 at home. And, just like how much do we take on? And at that point I made some decisions, and I was really lucky that we could survive with my husband's one salary. So I do recognize that privilege there, but it also got to be an emergency, just health wise. Like if I don't make some changes, I'm going to be in a hospital, with severe depression, anxiety, and panic attacks and the like. And so it's kind of coming back to yourself. And then when the pandemic hit, and going through that experience, I actually enjoyed those months of lockdown, not because of what was happening. Obviously that was separate, but what I could control in my own house was quite beautiful in a lot of ways. Just taking walks all day and not being able to go to stores, and even that fear a little bit of the virus, it kind of protects you, I think, in a way from, distractions or something, and I just got to spend this like really insane amount of time with my children, which I still am with, and Voice too. We both have 2 children under the age of 9. So we really, and we're both their primary caretakers through this. I'm letting the cat out of the bag, Voice. I hope you don't mind, but we do have that in common, where we're both like at home with our children all the time. And that, I'm really ready for like more transactional relationships, actually. Like the fact that my kids want so much from me all the time is actually really exhausting, you know, like you love them so much. But so I think it changed my work where over this past year, I've really been able to be like, no, I am an artist. No, I can make work and I can do all of that while I'm taking care of my children and watching our country go through so many things and feel the weight of the world and really still wanting to change things and make a difference. I think it's helped put things in perspective, and given me a little bit of like, you know, I should have more fun when I'm creating. All my work doesn't have to have so much meaning in it. And you know, I'm sure Fen, you agree too. When you're in these academic settings and voice, you know, like there's a lot of these expectations to like know exactly what you mean by when you're making things. And Fen's a dancer, I'm a visual artist, and voice is a poet. And sometimes you just need to be raw voice and like say what you need to say and not have it over thought, you know, and academia can kind of, you know, beat that out of you a little bit. And so it's been nice to be totally separated from that as well. Yeah, thanks for that question.
I just want to interrupt. I didn't do due diligence. I missed. I should say next week we are starting our July series. The flyer is out, but since you brought up academia, we have Jaslyn Galdi and we have Alvon Reed. They are both incredible artists and professors, and they are coming in to talk about what it is like to be a Black professor, and its complexities and challenges in these moments. So I hope that you will come back and join us for that. And as you were speaking, I was remembering I did a series that was just an improvisation diary, and just the bliss of just going in and putting something out there and then stopping. And being raw is important. You're right. And I think sometimes all of the Zoom communication means that we're a little less raw in our human interactions. So it'll be nice to try and get back to that in some ways.
I'm really ready for things in the art world to kind of go back to normal, but I want the rest of the world to not go back to normal. Like I still want to be able to like order drinks at my favorite bar and have them like box it up and me pick it up at the curb. Like I still want those things. I still want the luxuries of being in a pandemic without actually being in a pandemic. Like that's where I stand.
Probably the last question. Who would like to do the honors? Now nobody wants to do it because you're all too polite. Then in which case, I'm going to ask the question for Anne and Voice that I made them think about. What was the question you wish you'd been asked?
Back to that, huh? Thought I left it.
You just want to make us work so hard, don't you? I always like knowing, I mean, this is such a nice small group, I guess, hearing, you know, just why you're here. So it's not really a question, but I always just like hearing from people. So I don't know if you each want to just tell us what brought you tonight. And
Woo, thanks, Anne.
Nice. You're welcome.
Well, like I said, I'm an audience person and I absolutely miss galleries, the theater, poets, you name it. I've tried really hard, and Zoom is, I guess, a blessing in many respects, but I want that in person. And I'm striving for it, looking forward to it, and hearing from you as artists really makes me hopeful. You know, that it's there. I can almost touch it. So.
Fen brought me here.
Aw.
Thankfully, I'm the newest person in her department,
Cool.
and I've just tried to learn and be more immersed in everything I could. And so when she sent the email out about these, I was like, oh, I've got to do this. So thank you.
Thanks.
I'm
Thank you for
Ashley.
that.
Yes, thanks. I'm Ashley. Fen actually brought me here. But I am always, one of the coolest things about Zoom is getting to hear from people that I wouldn't normally encounter, whether it's a geographical thing or just like we run in different circles. And so it's a really good way to get out of my own little bubble safely, of course. I'm the marketing manager at Kentucky Arts Center in Tuscaloosa, Northport area, and an artist myself. And so I'm always looking for cool stuff happening.
That's great.
Alyssa, I don't know if you're able to unmute and tell us why you're here, but you're welcome to if you would like.
Hi, thanks for all of your wisdom and everything that everybody has shared. I am a dancer in non-academic settings, and also the president of the board of directors for a small dance organization. And so I was just kind of in that role thinking of like how how to be a good support person for that organization as we start coming back into creating in-person events.
What's the name of your organization?
It's called The Dance Thing.
The Dance Thing.
Cool.
Based in Seattle, Washington.
Okay, fantastic.
You know, someone gave me a tidbit that I'll share with you that we've been approaching our anti-board, we call them, with our organization, is we're really trying to develop our board to, when they come to our events, actually like just talk to the audience that's there. Tell them you're on the board. Tell them that you're so excited to be a part of this awesome organization that is really doing good work, and that it's really trying to build advocates at events. And we have our work cut out for us because we're such a new board. We've been around 2 years, but our newest iteration of 12 people started in January. And so I mean, and you're probably past all of that, but for me, it just felt like really like, it kind of let me off the hook to feel, because I'm in charge of development and I'm in charge of the money in our organization. But it let me off the hook in a way that, like, not because I don't want to be responsible, but because I just don't think it's time yet to like ask people to give too much. Like I just need their faces and their energy and their excitement for the mission. And that's kind of it. And if people are expecting more of you than that, then they might have like, okay, their organization could go under, that's true, but they also might have unrealistic expectations for the world is right now. That it's a huge alignment happening, and this chaos, I think, is actually hopefully going to give all organizations more money, more capital, more say, more power in their organizations, not in a top down, but in a across the board, you know, pay structures and things like that. And You know, the NEA just announced a couple days ago that like our organization now can apply for an NEA grant, where like when they came out with COVID restrictions a year and a half ago, we couldn't apply because we weren't even an organization 4 years ago. And that was, you had to have gotten grant funding from them. So I feel like that's like a huge shift, that now we can apply without having, you know, the pedigree of a long organization. So I do see like these really major baby steps happening that I think are going to really help us. And so your board, number one, your board always should be calling the people who run the organization and telling them what a great job they're doing. Like that would be awesome if we got that like once a week. It would feel really good. So I mean, that's just, you know, that encouragement, or calling when they have an event and saying, what can I do? What can I take off your plate?
Yeah.
You know, that's really helpful.
And we're doing a great job.
Oh, thanks. Fen joined our board in January. Thanks, Fen. I appreciate that.
And that brings us to 7:30. What I love to do at this time is I turn off the camera and I let people hang out if they've got things they still want to chat about. But before we do that, Anne and Voice, perhaps you could share with the room, where can we find your work when we want to follow you and dive into more of what you're doing? Take it in the chat.
It's kind of scattered about. Like I don't have a central place, which is one of the things that is forthcoming for this fall and this last quarter of the year, is a website to pull all my things together. But I have their videos of me doing performances on YouTube. Yeah, that's it. There's just tons and tons of videos of me doing.
You have Instagram and you have Facebook.
I have Instagram, yes,
and
so
you
can
post
find me on
all your
social
cool
media
things there
at a free voice, on all social media except Facebook, where I am Brian Voice Porter Hawkins.
Did I get that right in the chat?
Yep, a free voice, all one word. Yep,
Fantastic.
that is it.
And then I have my own personal website. It's annetronson.com. And you can watch videos and performance pieces. I've worked with a lot of dancers, a lot of musicians over the years. I'm working with a writer right now, and we're adding some text. So, but yeah, so that's one place. And then vinegarprojects.org is our website. And please check it out. And if you want to know more about Vinegar, there's a lot of information on our website. But you can also sign up for our newsletter, and that will keep you in the know when we have openings. Because Anna, we have really safe COVID openings where we only let so many people go in the gallery and they have to wear a mask. And like we've really done a good job of adapting to COVID. And we've had 6 art openings since the pandemic. And I have to say they've been a really kind of a silver lining for a lot of people who, like even people with kids, because we have a huge parking lot with bonfires and we do s'mores and everyone can run and have fun, and it's been a nice outlet.
Beautiful. All right. Well, hopefully we'll see you all there. Folks, thank you so much to Anne and to Voice and to all of you for showing up. Can we give them kind of Zoom applause? You were wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great night.